Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation and got my friend from the Northern Hemisphere, Armando Vandetti. How are you, mate?
Doing good, doing good. How are you, Peter?
Not too bad, not too bad. Weather's warming up. How's it over there? Bit
It's
cold?
freezing. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Today we're going to do a really special episode. We're going to do an episode on the Cult's latest album. So I'm a little bit slow off the bat. This album came out a few months ago, did it, Armando?
Yeah, it was released October 7th.
Right. Under the Midnight Sun. So I've got the vinyl copy.
Yeah.
And
I have the
it's a beautiful looking
CD copy here.
Yeah. Beautiful presentation. Here we go.
Yes, it's a very minimalist cover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our first impressions of this album, deep dive on each track, things we like, things we don't like, and a bit of a synopsis at the end. So, Armando, what was your first impression of this album?
Well, being the 11th album from the Cult, it wasn't an easy listen at first. Just a bit of background on the album. It was released October the 7th. It was produced by, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, ladies and gentlemen. It was produced by Tom Dalgetty, who has produced groups like the Pixies and Ghost. And what to say about the album? It's not your typical rock and roll fare in terms of like albums in the past, albums like Electric, or even the self-titled in 1994. It grew on me. It wasn't an easy listen for me. It took about 2 or 3 listens for me to get into it. And once I got into it, I thought it was great. So what were your takes on the album?
I have exactly the same experience as you. I found that it was completely different. So I'm used to the crunchy, riffy, Duffy type of guitar work, but this was very atmospheric. And we'll talk more about this track by track, but it was completely a different sort of wheelhouse to what I was expecting. My history with the Cult was one album, Electric. I saw the tour. I loved it so much. I saw them about 3 times when they toured Australia in 1986, 87. I love Sonic Temple. Ceremony I like as well. But just through the sands of time, Armando, I probably just didn't really buy a Cult album for a considerable period of time or listen to another Cult album. This is the first Cult album I've listened to in a long, long time. And I also listened to some of the other Cult albums just to do a comparison, and completely different. So it does take a while to get into it, to sort of understand, because it's one of those albums that on first listen, you sort of think, okay, where are they going with this? It does require concentration and just getting into the whole groove of what they're doing. So it's one of those ones where listen to a few times and the penny does drop. And, in some cases that can be the most rewarding experience because it stays with you. There are some albums that are like a sugar hit, and then, it's sort of the sugar hit goes and you're over it. But this one is different.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be said. I mean, the Cult are, one of those groups that in the 80s when they started, they would release an album every couple of years. This album came out again this year in 2022. The last album that they released was Hidden City, which came out in 2016. And it was that album was produced by Bob Rock. I do believe Bob Rock has produced 5 albums with the Cult. But I mean, almost with the Cult up until now, you basically know what you're going to get, like really hard riffs, heavy drums, um, and you're going to get, in terms of the messaging, a lot of to do with native rights, Native American rights, because I do believe that Ian Asbury is part Native in terms of his ethnicity. You're going to get that, and this is no different. And even in terms of the artwork on the album, it's very minimalist. And you do get, when you open the cover, you do get some Native art representation on the album, and there we are. We have a good representation of the album right there. So it's no different in that. But what's different, yes, again, very minimalist artwork on it. Again, that belies what's on the album in terms of music itself.
Yes.
On this album, the album has 8 tracks, ladies and gentlemen. It is clocks in just over 35 minutes.
So what an album should be, I should say, Mr. Vandetti. I'm a big stickler for less is more sometimes.
Well, I do agree, Mr. Kerr. But it does depend on what's in the grooves or what's on the CD in terms of the
in the grooves. I love delivery. That. Love it.
Yeah. So I love this back and forth you and I have. I love you to death, Peter. Yeah. I really and truly do. I think you are a gentleman among gentlemen. But just quickly, I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm just gonna go through who is on the album, because everyone who is familiar with the cult knows they go through a revolving door of musicians.
Yeah, well, you got the 2 principals and a lot of newbies. So go through the list, please.
Yes, on this album you have, of course, Ian Asbury, who is listed as vocalist and does percussion. You have Billy Duffy, those are the 2 mainstays of the cult. Yep. Billy Duffy does acoustic and electric guitars. You have Charlie Jones on electric and upright bass. You have Ian Matthews on drums. And you have additional guitars and keyboards provided by Tom Dalgetty, who is, again, the producer. Mm-hmm. Of the album. He
does some guitars, right?
Yeah, and keyboards.
Yep.
The album has 8 songs, and it's split into two sides. In that the first 4 tracks are what you would call the more guitar-driven and bass and drums-driven tracks. But even so, they're not what you would call your standard heavy rock fare.
Yeah.
But I'll let you kick off.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start off with Mirror. So, what do you think of this as the opening track on the album?
I do believe it's one of the singles that was released. I think it was the 3rd single released from the album, and it starts off the album. And this, along with the rest of the tracks, the guitars are used more as more of a texture in terms of soundscapes and stuff. It's a beautiful arranged song. The characters in each song, they're basically coming to grips with different sets of reality in their lives. Like, whether it's coming to a realization about your own mortality, about the mortality of people around you, losing people in your life, or just basically in this song, I do believe he's talking about looking at yourself, whether it's in a physical mirror or a metaphor, just looking at yourself, taking stock of yourself, and coming to the realization that you have done the best that you can do with your life, and just sort of accepting that and moving on, and just resigning yourself to yourself that you are a human being and you are flawed, but that's okay. So, I mean,
Well said. I think this is soundscape wise very atmospheric, and that what blew me away, because not hearing the Cult for a period of time, I was expecting the like putting a warm pair of slippers on, hearing the crunchy guitar of Billy Duffy, but hearing this sort of soundscape, very subtle guitar layering, and you've got one thing that was just nice, you know, hearing the warm, familiar vocals of Ian Astbury and his crooning, you know. To me, it kind of harks back to early Cult. I'm talking about pre-Electric, their early incarnation, maybe semi-Gothic, perhaps, but it's atmospheric. It's a nice little opener. It's textured. It's different. You need to listen to it a few times for it to soak in. So it's not one of those instant sugar hit type songs. You've got to listen to it a few times.
Yeah, I found too, just quickly, that I found almost difficult to decipher what he was saying. In terms of the lyrics, you know, like, but in saying that, I also found that you sort of just got swept up in the moment of the music and you just went with it. You may not understand what he was saying right off the bat, but you were just sort of taken on a journey.
Yes.
From the first note, you just went with it and you enjoyed it.
Yeah. You
didn't care where you were going to end up, but you knew that you were going to enjoy the ride.
Absolutely.
You know.
What about A Cut Inside? What do you think of that song, Armando?
I think that with it just follows what Mirror started. The guitar work on it, the sonic soundscapes that were coming out. I mean, I do believe that they use more keyboards on this album than possibly previously on previous albums. I may be wrong, and if anyone out there wants to correct me, please do. Wouldn't be the first time.
Armando, do you think it's a little bit U2 sounding?
Yeah.
I sort of, when I was listening to this, I was thinking this is sort of, it's got a bit of an edge feel to it. So, you know, if you were playing a game and I said, Armando, here's headphones, put it on and listen to this song, and you don't know who it is and you don't hear the vocals, you'd probably sort of say it's in that U2 wheelhouse, wouldn't you?
Yeah, kind of. I would agree with that. But again, I mean, it's all one big tapestry, and that, you know, like people, there are bands that influence one another. You know, like it's all one big wheelhouse. So I could see that.
Lots of light and shade.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Even in terms of the videos that they did for this album, I believe there were 3 videos that they did for this album. There's a lot of light and shade. There's a lot of introspection, which on this album, which goes with you too. So yeah, I can see that.
And I'll quote some lyrics. No heathens in heaven, no sweet surrender, outsiders forever, ghost of our lives. So sort of referencing experiences. And when you look at the lyrics, I have looked up the lyrics. They're not verbose. They're not sort of big. They're sort of like maybe 10 words per line or less. Very kind of direct, but kind of interesting.
Yeah, and in terms of that, like you said, I believe, you know, less is more. I mean, it's very much. I think this is more their introspective album.
Yeah, it's brooding. I think I read a reviewer said described it as dark and brooding.
Yeah. Very much
speaking of dark and brooding, Vendetta X. What do you think of this song? Third track.
I think it falls in line with the previous 2. I mean, overall, I mean, again, there's a lot of guitar laden textures, uh, keyboard textures on here that just basically taking one on a trip. And again, you may listening to the lyrics, I had to sort of go back and keep listening, to see what they were saying, right? And because it's his vocal delivery.
Yeah.
Right. And
the real Jim Morrison ramped up on.
Yeah.
I call his vocal style on this album Jim Morrison on steroids.
Yeah.
He's really.
Yeah, no,
he's a very expressive vocal. I love his vocals, always have. And to be a good vocalist, you've got to have cut through. And he's charismatic because I've seen him perform live. He's the perfect frontman. He's actually he's a gold star frontman. Sorry, I'm going off track here, but
no.
Yeah, I saw him in the day with the Electric tour, and he was quite young. He had the big long hair and the leather trousers. But he was just charismatic. And for a moment in time with Sonic Temple, they were a big thing. That started to have a little bit of impact in America. And they were really knocking on the platinum door. I'm talking about that Guns N' Roses level.
Very much so. It's got to be said that on albums like even with starting from Love, Electric, Sonic Tempo,
Ceremony,
the subtitle, whatever Billy was doing on whatever notes Billy was playing on the guitar or building up, Ian Astbury could cut through them with his vocal.
Yes.
Like with as sharp as a butcher knife. These songs on this album. So and my dog is knocking at the door here. These songs, his vocals just sort of blended in very, very nicely. Just sort of melted into your subconscious.
Absolutely. Right? Still got a great set of pipes.
Exactly.
He has not aged. I mean, there's maturity. I mean, these guys are 60 years old-ish.
Yeah.
And you can see the music they're creating is of their age. There's depth, there's maturity. But his vocals,
there's also a sense
of sound pretty spick.
Bloody amazing. There's also, in terms of maturity and age, there's also a sense of still doubting what's to come. And what they've done in their lives in terms of not so much the lyrics, but also the delivery of the vocal, whether it's a lead vocal or whether it's a backing vocal or an overdub.
Absolutely.
It conveys a lot of emotion.
And it was recorded when they were in lockdown, Armando. So people were going through torture all around the world in this sort of situation. So you can see a lot of the anxiety and the darkness and, fitting perfectly into what you just said about what's ahead, because it was recorded in that type of environment.
Exactly. And the way it was recorded too, Ian Astbury, I believe, was in LA, and the rest of the band were in the UK, in England, and they sent tapes, obviously files back and forth. And there's also that sense of anxiety in terms of, do they know how this is going to turn out?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And for me, up to this point, and I'll say this and I'll say it again after, I applaud them for taking a chance and doing something that really wasn't expected of them. Because people are saying, well, it's not what I expected. You know what? So what? They took a chance, and in my book, they came out on top.
Yeah.
In terms of what they wanted to do, they tried something different.
Sure. So my views of Vendetta X, it's got this nice driving synth line, or propels all the way through it. I think that's really interesting. And the lyrics, simple but direct. The futility of war, fighting over love and hate. It's one of the kind of regular themes through the cult world. But no, I think it's a fine track. Alrighty, so the last track on side one is "Give Me Mercy," which is Ian Asprey, Billy Duffy, and Dalgetty. Tom Dalgetty's got some writing creds on this album.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
I think it's fantastic.
Song?
I think it's fantastic. It was the first single released off the album, and again, it just continues with the use of guitar as a not so much a lead instrument, but sort of a texture and
soundscape, isn't it?
As a soundscape. And I mean, in the chorus it says, "Give me mercy, love will find you." So basically, the way I take it, I mean, lyrics are open to interpretation. He's saying to whoever it is, give me a chance. Like, you may doubt me right now, but please give me a chance to show you what I'm talking about, or to show you what I mean. And eventually the answer will come to you. Love will find you. Whether it's love, whether it's acceptance, it will eventually come to you. Just please don't. I think he's pleading with the person, don't turn your back on me. Give me a chance to show you that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic.
Great. So, I'll give you a little bit of an excerpt of a quote from Ian about this song. He goes, "I was absolutely enamored with this piece of music Billy had written, and it perfectly fits these thoughts I've been having about our cultures and the need to move past assumptions of duality. We need new language because we can't express where we're going." And that, my friend, perfectly sums up what you were saying a track or two ago. Where are we going?
Exactly.
So you're right on the money, and that's what they were saying.
Exactly. I mean,
I just wrote soundscape. That's all I've got to say. It's huge. It's cinematic, and the way that Duffy's playing, its chords, its sound effects, it's building textured guitar sounds instead of going for the crunchy riff. Whether I like that or not, stay tuned. We'll keep going.
And it's got to be said too, there's a certain freedom in not knowing where you're going. There's a certain abandonment that, you're going to get from A to B. Yeah. But how you get there is up to interpretation or out in the ethos. Who knows? Right. And there's a certain amount of freedom in that.
Yep.
Yep. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll flip over the record and we've got Out of Heaven. Now,
I'll let you go to
this side. It's completely different, doesn't it? It's different music on this side. Yes. This side, they're using more orchestral instruments, cellos, violins, and to me, this is the more, I guess, the resignation side of it, like the resigning yourself to the fact that eventually you really don't know what's going to happen in your life or to the lives of the people around you. It's a bit evangelic, this song.
Yeah.
It builds up. I noticed the drumming, and I'm just looking down at the creds just to remind myself. It's Ian Matthews, drums and percussion. A lot of dance rhythms. It's it's not straight four on the floor drumming. You've got a bit of a dance, and you could you could see a bit of shimmy. There's a bit of shimmy, bit of a groove going.
He uses, like, for example, I didn't mean to cut you off, but he uses for example, like on, I believe it's a cut inside, he uses more the floor toms as more as the backbeat, as the drums to it. So there's more of a rhythmic, Native American drumming in terms of the production on it. So yeah, you're right. There isn't a lot of four on the floor. It's more of it's very atmospheric, the drumming. More of an accent, an accent, as instead of a foundation.
And this is another co-write with Dalgetty. So Asprey, Duffy, and Dalgetty. So interesting to sort of speculate what sort of he brought to the table. Like when you look at Dalgetty, he's done the Pixies, Ghost, and Royal Blood. Now, Pixies are all about light and shade, push and pull, dark, light. I mean, Nirvana based their whole first couple of albums on the Pixies. The Pixies are like one of the biggest influences of Nirvana. I'm just wondering how much Dalgetty was bringing, because he seems, looking at his CV, he has dealt with a lot of bands that are big on atmosphere. And I'm just wondering if he was quite an influence on this album in regards to pushing it into that atmospheric sort of space, as well as the songwriting. So pure speculation from an Aussie from afar away, but I don't know.
Possible, and I think maybe the band were ready to go there. I think the band were more, not that they didn't lead, but I think in terms of how they wanted the sound to come out. But excuse me, I think that they were more willing to be led in terms of, Dalgetty saying, let's try it this way and see where it goes. And the band saying, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And more often than not, I think maybe they liked where it was going and they wanted to go there. They wanted to be led. They wanted to say, okay, he seems to know what he's talking about. Let's see where it can go.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next song I want to talk about, and it's actually my favorite, and that's Knife Through Butterfly Heart. Yes, maybe a bit contrarian. What do you think of this song?
I think that I think it's a fantastic song. It's more of the I call more the experimental side, because again, you're looking at more of symphonic elements that come in, and sorry, my dog is scratching at the door. More symphonic elements that have come in, and again, this is sort of Ian coming in and just singing one or two lines and letting it hang in the air.
Yes.
Not sort of cramming lyrics in one, like a lot of lyrics in one line, and just sort of like, letting the atmosphere of the backing track take over too. Yeah. So I think it works on that and that angle and that level.
Yeah.
But
I think this is immediately what I love is just hearing the acoustic guitar, and Ian Asprey's vocals are very close in your face, and they're kind of warm. So you can imagine the microphone. He's like this,
right in front. Yes,
right in front.
Exactly.
Very expressive singing,
and he's very.
And then
subtle.
it sort of changes and builds into a kind of a power ballad, full of gusto, bit of passion. Lyrics are nice. It refers to childhood memories, being young, possibly true love, but he relates to a childhood experience where he was knocked down.
There's a lot of reflection on this track, as with the whole album.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's a great song.
I don't like the drumming on this track though. I wrote it's a bit middling. I don't know if it's the production. I think the drumming on this particular song, that might be, could be a little bit, I don't know, a bit more distinct, a bit more separation. To my ears, I've heard it. But
Yeah. What about
other than that quibble, that minor quibble, I
Yeah.
like it. I think this is one of my favorite songs because it is different, and I like the sentiments. So,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
yeah,
what?
there are.
Well, again, I think the album as a whole. I know we're going track by track, but I think this album as a whole was considered to be, to an extent, an experiment to see what they could get away with. In terms of their songwriting and production.
Maybe just to see if they still got it.
Yeah, and to see if they could do something different. But speaking of which, the next track, Impermanence, what are your takes on that? Let's turn it up, turn around a little bit. What's your take on Impermanence?
I think it's gloomy. It's written in a minor key. There's it's soundscape. I wrote it's beautiful, broken, and beautiful. It's the song it's got fragility to it. It's kind of broken, but at the same time, it's beautiful. Ugly can be beautiful. I don't know. There's a duality to it. But again, it's in that soundscape, just to make it easier for viewers to decipher what I'm just saying. It's still this soundscape. It's not like riffs, power chords, electric lead breaks. It's all about a soundscape.
I think All Outside too is basically a soundscape.
Yep.
And I think as much, of course, there's a lushness to it, but I also believe there's a lot of space in the playing and in the production, which opens it up to the listener coming away from it with their own sort of idea and interpretation.
Yeah.
Overall.
One thing I do want to mention, Armando, is to our viewers, and is about the origins of the title of the next song and the album, Under the Midnight Sun. So the story goes that they were playing a rock festival in Finland.
That's
and
right.
Finland is known as one of the countries of the midnight sun, where the sun just does not go down. And they were playing at 3 a.m. in the morning. God bless them. Don't know if I could be awake at 3 a.m. these days. And just looking at the interactions of the crowd, getting into it, the dancing, the grooving. And it was a memory, even though it was many, many years ago, that had remained with him to this day. And he wanted to, he was reminiscing about that. And this is what this album is all built around, that idea, maybe that atmosphere. So I think that would have been a fascinating scene, to go to a rock festival where the sun just does not go down. And playing a set at 3 a.m. in the morning. Wow.
Exactly. And it would literally, I know for myself, it would screw with my sort of internal clock and sort of thought processes, because you're up at 3 a.m, the sun is still up, and you're like, okay, something's not right here. You should be asleep, or because we're sort of.
I've been to Scandinavia. Well, I've been to Iceland, and the light does not go out, and you've just got to put the shutters down. That's the only thing you can do.
I know, and you've got to sort of keep yourself in that mentality of, okay, it's 11 p.m. or midnight. I should be asleep right now, and sort of keep that mentality in your head.
It's pretty bizarre when you see people playing golf at midnight. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and in saying that, keeping along with the track listing here, Under the Midnight Sun, the title track, is my favorite song.
Romantic, isn't it?
It's the arrangement, the symphonic accompaniment with the cellos. To me, it is so hypnotic and intoxicating, frightening at the same time, because you're sort of left with a feeling of, I don't know everything. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm bloody well scared. At the same time, you also resign yourself to the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing you can do about it in the end. And that's what I like about the track. It takes the whole album as a whole, forgive me. I've only had 2 cups of coffee and I'm, the album as a whole takes you on a ride and you don't know where you're going to end up. And that's what scares me. As a person living in my 50s, thinking that, in your 20s and 30s, you're basically feeling like you're going to live forever.
Yes.
But knowing the end and resigning yourself to the inevitable truth and honesty of the fact that you are not. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's what this song represents to me. And it's bloody scary.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it too.
Well said, mate. He's croontastic on this. He's got his crooning voice. He's very underrated as a vocalist, and
he is.
I love the string arrangements on this song, and it's a fine closing track. Yeah, enough said. I think you've sort of encapsulated everything. It's an album that, great maturity, but it's 60-year-olds that are making music that is meaningful to them at this point in time, and it's a document of where they are.
Exactly, and it must be said, after hearing this song was what made me message you and say, Peter, we should be covering this album. We should be talking about it. We're missing a good opportunity here. So this is why I messaged you and said, why don't we try this? And yeah, it's, it's not maybe for the staunch rock fan, but you know what? It's different. And it's for that reason alone, I like it. And it's for the reason that they took a chance.
Yeah.
And why not? Why not?
Well, I'll give you my synopsis. I think that it's a good cult album, but probably not great. And I think that, I've been very positive song by song going into it, and I know the intentions are great and all the foundations are there. But to me, I've listened to this a few times and I'd like a little bit of crunch, because to me there's too much soundscape all the way through. And I know this is very much a document of their times, and maybe it's my entry point into the cult, but I'd like to hear a little bit of crunch, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of maybe just rock out 1 or 2 tracks, because all the way through, to me, it's like a soundtrack. It's a movie soundtrack with vocals. That's not faint praise. And because you still got the elements, you still got Asprey's vocals, you still got that sort of general sound, but I'd like a bit of rock out, because I think it's too much on the soundscape.
Yeah, you mean in order to break up the monotony of the,
monotony is not the word, but I just think it needs every classic album has light and shade and variety. Yeah. And I've listened to this a few times, and I even got my missus to get a second opinion. She loves the cult. Yeah. And she said that she appreciated it, but she missed a little bit of the electric, a little bit of crunch.
Yeah, almost like there's too much shade.
Yeah. So that's my quibble. It just needs a little bit more crunch. So I'd say it's solid. It's a good album, but it's not the great cult album. But Armando, would this be one of your favorites of the year, would you say?
Well, if anyone who follows me on Facebook, I did rank this as in my top 5. So I praise it for the fact that I praise it for the fact that it's not an easy listen. And there are times when you really need to look into yourself and sort of like look at the good, the bad, and the unknown of what's going to happen, and own it. And I praise it for that, in that they owned the fact that these are men in their 60s, and they've come to the realization that they're not going to be around forever, musically, and that they needed to make a statement. To me, this is their statement album. Now, whatever that statement is, that's open to interpretation, which is a good thing, and hopefully they're not going to wait 6 years to do another one. Although with Ian Astbury, you never know, right? I mean, he's been known to, to say, I'm not bloody doing this again. F all of you, and I'm moving on, because I can't deal with Billy anymore.
Absolutely. Well, one thing guaranteed, if they come around these parts, I will definitely see them live again. I saw them a fair amount in the heyday, and I think the last time I saw them was maybe 8 years ago, when they did the Electric album. They played that from start to finish, with the exception of Born to Be Wild. They didn't want to play that, so they, what he said in the concert? He said, "We're not going to play this song. We'll go on to the next one," because they hated it. I think that was a record company intervention.
Well, then why do it? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, if you don't like something, then don't do it. I mean,
if you're on the cusp of a big recording contract, I guess, there's a bit of a power play.
No, true. That's true.
Armando, as always, you bring it home. Thank you, my friend, and really thank you for all the shows that you've done in 2022. They're some of my favorites, and we're going to be doing plenty in 2023 with the viewers. We'll be once we get off this call, we'll go through. We'll be plotting our next few ideas and things like that.
I really do appreciate you having me on the show.
You're part of the Rock Daydream Nation family, so I really appreciate
you. Believe me, you contribute more to these shows than I do. And I really do appreciate the fact that
don't listen to what he says.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the truth. Don't listen to the host. Listen to the co-host or the guest.
All right, please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us what you think of this album, The Cult, and I'll flash it up one more time. There you go.
Yes. One moment.
You can get it out on vinyl.
Yes.
Eventually came to Australia 3 months later, but got it.
There you go.
Please
please let us know what your opinions are of this album.
Absolutely.
Good or bad or indifferent.
Yeah.
Because all opinions count. So.
Sure. See you soon. Cheers.